batch of heather gray hooded lightweight t-shirts. They're long sleeve, and I wanted to do a design, a Minnesota design on them. I found this at the thrift store, and it's just the perfect little template for the state of Minnesota. Not even sure what it's made out of. I actually bought two of them, and one of them I already used in a sign or something. I had already made something with it. But this one I'm keeping just for a template, and I want to trace this onto a paperback adhesive. I'm using the Heat and Bond Light. And then I want to use this really, I used this a couple weeks ago on a bag. I love seersucker. I found this scrap at the thrift store, and I'm going to use that for the shape of Minnesota. Love the summery colors of it, and I think it's just going to be really fun. And because I'm going to be ironing this on the back side of the fabric, I do need to flip over my state of Minnesota here and reverse it. I want to add some detail to the drawstrings on the front, and I'm going to add a little bit more of this Heat and Bond Light just down the strip. I kind of want both the red and the blue on it, and so I'm just going to line this up and press this on. I thought it would add some interest if I had just a stripe of something just to add. So I found this piece of white, it's like a white twill tape, and I have an archival ink. This is a waterproof permanent ink, and this is the color Paradise Teal. And so I'm going to go ahead and use this, and I'm just stamping. This is a really old stamp that I had, just like a little heart, and I'm going over and I'm just stamping this. I'm going to stamp several inches of this, so I have enough to put on all four. And they're not perfectly even. They're not perfectly even, but I'm trying just to line it up with the previous one and then just pressing. Just going to remove this paper. I do have a crease in the center here. I can hardly see it, but I did fold it and creased it. So I had the center, and I'm going to just center that, the bottom part. And I'm going to press that on. I think I'm going to put this just on the bottom third of this, just right in there. I'm going to remove that as well, and then just fold this just to give it a pop of color. Probably need about this much. I'm going to be stitching this with white thread. I'm just going to use my regular straight stitch for the trim, and then I'm going to switch to my free motion foot and drop the feed dogs, and then go around with again with white thread and just free motion stitch this on. I'm putting on the trim right now, and I just straight stitched across both of the long ends, but this cut end, like the short end, is very ravelly. So I think I am going to do a satin stitch on that, which is just a zigzag that's really close together. So that's what I'm going to do on both of the ends. I'm going to switch to my free motion foot. I decided to free motion stitch around this Minnesota shape, just because there's so much turning to do, and it's just going to be easier to to use free motion, because then I can go sideways and backwards, and I'll probably stitch around it twice so it has more of a scribbled on kind of look to it. I'm struggling here, there we go. So my feed dogs are going to be dropped, and I'm going to have it in the straight stitch position. And when I drop my feed dogs, the stitch length automatically goes to 0. But if it doesn't on your machine, just moves the stitch length to 0. And I also wanted just to mention a little bit about stabilizer. This is stabilizer. This is a very, it's like a t-shirt. It's a thin knit. And I prefer not to use a stabilizer if I can help it. And so if I don't go off the edge at all or go off into the t-shirt, this seersucker should be stable enough. So I'm just gonna try just to stay on the actual applique shape itself and see how it goes. If not, I can always just take the whole garment off of here and put a stabilizer on the back side. And I would use like a stitch and tear. For the little ties, I'm going to use the same free motion foot. Go down both sides across each end, and then I think I'm going to go down the middle just to catch that also, the joining part there. It's all done. I did want to mention also, when I do my final press, I just take time over the ink, just heat set that ink. It is a waterproof permanent ink, but I want to make sure that the ink is heat set into the fibers. While I have the Minnesota template out, I'm going to make some patches. I have just some random pieces of felt, and I thought what I would do is trace the shape onto, this is just freezer paper, and it is the plastic coated, so it does have it has a surface, on a waxy surface that I can iron onto the felt on the top side of the felt and then cut out my shape. So this is not going to have like a paperback adhesive on it, but I thought people could probably like slow stitch these on, or even glue them on to bags or whatever, their pillows, whatever they're wanting. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trace these. I think I have six or seven of them, pieces of felt. And then I'm going to put a little tree applique on it. I just thought that'd be fun. Could I have just traced around the template using chalk or something? Probably could have, but I do find it's easier sometimes just to be able to cut through paper. I got my shapes cut out, and now this freezer paper will just unpeel. I want to add a tree applique to each of these. I picked out some greens. These are just scraps, and then I just put scraps of Heat and Bond light on the back side of them. I'm going to be using my pine tree die for this, and this is the Tim Holtz Alteration. This is no longer available, but you may find it on eBay, possibly. Sometimes even Etsy sellers will sell used Bigz die. And I'm just going to lay these on here and run them through. Make my sandwich. I'm going to peel away this paperback adhesive. And then I cut out some heart shapes, and I thought I would stick a heart shape on each one. Now this is a very detailed applique. I'm going to stitch it on with using free motion. And how I do this is I'll just go back and forth. I'm not going to go into each one of these little, it just gets too messy. So I'm going to set it up at the sewing machine again with my free motion foot, and I'll show you how I'm going to do this. I'm just going to use a darker brown all-purpose thread. I still have bobbin thread, a white bobbin thread in the bobbin. I do have one more sweatshirt that I want to work on this week, and this is an Enza brand. I do get these from a wholesaler, and I'll link that down below for you. This particular brand is only available through that wholesaler, and this is a wonderful style. This is just really oversized. It's quite long. I'm going to make it even a little bit longer. I think they'd be fun with over leggings or yoga pants, and just a really comfortable sweatshirt. I am going to be doing some deconstruction on it. I'm going to open up the side seams just to give it a little more wiggle room. And then I'll finish that off, that edge off with using just like maybe a blanket stitch or my applique stitch on my sewing machine. I'm going to be cutting the sleeves off, not too far, but a little bit up, and then maybe roll them and put a decorative tie at the end. I do that on several of my sweatshirts in the last couple years, and just adds a nice pop of color at the bottom of the sleeve and a little bit of detail. I'm going to add one pocket with the bottom of this one of the sleeves. I'm going to add the pocket to the right hand side, I believe. I think that's it. I'm going to do a little bit different to the neckline. And again, like I mentioned, this bottom band, I'm gonna do some just a different look on that. This is the fabric that I've picked out. Now I don't want just a ton of chickens on this, but I love this fabric, and so I am going to use some of this for the tie. And you're not going to see a lot of that. You're going to see the color, but you're really not going to see the chicken. But I also think I want to do just a little bit of the actual chicken fabric on the pocket. Maybe add a little bit of lace too on the pocket. And then this is the coordinating panel that went with this fabric. And I just recently purchased this. It is called Chicken Scratch. I will put this information down below for you if anybody else is interested in it. It's got these just adorable panels, and I'm going to make pillows. I think I'm going to make just some really little accent pillows and use some of the chicken fabric for the border, and then on the back side of this I'll just use probably a heavyweight canvas or something on the back weight. I think these would be really cute in a basket or just on a shelf in a country type home. I really love just the eggs too. Growing up, there was this saying that we used to say is be a good egg. I don't know if anybody else ever heard of that saying or not, but that reminds me of it. It would be fun just to just print off on my printer something that says be a good egg, and think it would make it really cute. Either a cute on a pouch or a pillow or something, just something whimsical. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to the pillows or not this week, but that is my idea on that. But I want to work on the sweatshirt. I'm going to do that deconstruction first. For this bottom, like I said, I'm just going to cut up partially on this side seam. Approximately 5 inches or so. And then I'm going to cut this seam out of here. I'm going to do the same for this side. Now for this band, I'm going to cut just the top layer right down the center. And then this is going to open up, and it's going to give a little bit more length to the bottom. I'll give this a press to eliminate that fold somewhat. And then it just has this neat little, I don't know, a little lip here in the front. I just think it looks fun. This is going to not fray, but it may curl a little bit. I'm going to do the same to the back side of this. Just cut right down the center. And now for this part of it, I do want to cut some of this band down. I think I'm just going to cut it down about approximately a ½ inch above this stitch line, and then this is going to have like a double layer similar to the bottom of it. I'm going to work on this cuff now to make it into a pocket shape. I think I'm only going to put one of the pockets on. I mean, I could do two, but I think I'm only going to do one. Sometimes it's just easier. I don't have to make sure they're lined up so perfectly straight, and I have a little bit more room to work with. And I added a little bit of an applique to the pocket. This chicken wire fabric I did get from the panel. So to stitch these on, I am going to use, it's called an applique stitch on my sewing machine. It looks like a blanket stitch or like a buttonhole stitch. That is what I'm going to use to stitch this on, and then also to edge stitch this. And I'm not going to show this, I'm not going to take this to the sewing machine and show you, but I'll show you what it looks like when I'm finished with this part. Here's some of my progress so far. I did stitch the pocket on and the applique on using my applique stitch, and also did the vent. I also hemmed the bottom of the sleeve, and I put a piece of the fabric, just using the heat and bond light, just adhered it approximately, I'd say 3 inches above the bottom of the cuff. And that is where I am going to poke a hole in that, and I'm going to stitch this, and that's where my drawstring is going. And then for the tie, I'm just going to do a fabric tube. This measures 19 inches, and I'm going to cut this in half, and that is going to be what I'm going to just pull this up and tie it. I also started working on one of the pillows, and I'll show you where I'm at on that. I just took a piece of the chicken fabric and I cut it at 2.5 inches, and I framed it, gave it borders. And then for the back, I did use a canvas, and I just did a little applique of the eggs on the back, just for some whimsy. I did already stitch one line right here. I'm using like a smoke gray thread for this. Now I want to take this to my sewing machine, and I do want to do some thread doodling on this using that same smoke gray colored thread. And then I can put the two together, stitch it, and stuff it. So that's my plan on that. I'm going to take you to my sewing machine now, and I'm going to share with you how I do my free motion stitching on my little tab things, and also on what I'm going to do on the pillow. First I need to poke a hole in this though. I'm just using my crocodile for that. Get it in the middle. And then I'm just going to remove a little bit of that fabric that doesn't punch out. I have my free motion foot on. My feed dogs are dropped. I'm going to just place this sleeve, my open arm here. I'm going to go around the applique, the piece of fabric, and then I'm going to go in the center and I'm going to go around and around that hole. I did get the sleeves tied up. And here's what the little pillow looks like with the free motion thread doodling around in the chicken. I hope you enjoyed this, everybody. I hope you have a chance to create this week. Bye for now.